You take a slow breath in, letting the air settle softly in your chest, and you feel a gentle loosening around your thoughts. A quiet warmth drifts across your awareness, as though something far beneath you exhales at the same pace you do. In this peaceful moment, you imagine the earth stretching out below you not as rock and crust and molten heat, but as a vast, ancient giant lying in a deep, steady sleep. The giant rests beneath your feet the way a mountain rests beneath morning fog. Solid, calm, unhurried. And you, standing on the surface, feel the soft rise and fall of its breathing, a rhythm as slow as dawn. You let yourself lean into that rhythm, noticing how your own inhale lengthens just a little, as though keeping time with something older and wider than anything you've ever known. You picture the giant's chest expanding beneath continents, beneath oceans, beneath the drifting plates of crust that shift like blankets over its slumbering form. With each breath you take, the giant's presence becomes clearer. Not threatening, not intense, simply immense. Immense and quiet, immense and dreaming. Under your feet, the earth warms gently, a reminder that this giant carries heat in its core the way you carry warmth in your palms. Deep down, currents swirl like slow tides of glowing rock, folding and unfolding, rising and sinking in a patient dance. They move so slowly that you imagine the giant dreaming in geological time, each inhale spanning centuries, each exhale stretching across tens of thousands of long, drifting years. You smile a little, amused at the idea that somewhere in those deep, molten thoughts, the giant might have dreams stranger than yours. Perhaps dreams about shifting mountains, or dreams about cracking ice sheets, maybe even dreams about the little creatures, like you, walking along its massive surface, whispering stories about the ground beneath them. You don't know. You don't need to know. The giant sleeps peacefully, and that peace moves through you in steady, quiet waves. You feel the softness of the moment settle deeper around you. The world seems to slow down, as though the giant's breathing has wrapped itself around your thoughts. In this slower rhythm, you begin sensing how continents drift, not as collisions or violent shifts, but as gentle slides, like puzzle pieces slowly adjusting themselves for comfort. Every movement becomes part of the giant's breathing. Every shifting rock becomes the stretch of an ancient limb. Every warm vent of rising magma becomes the faint sigh of a sleeping body. As you imagine these movements, you notice how your mind softens toward the idea of volcanoes. They lose their intensity, their fiery spectacle, their loud reputation. Instead, they turn into tiny openings along the giant's skin, little vents where warmth escapes, where breath rises, where the internal rhythms of the earth whisper their presence. A supervolcano becomes just a deeper breath, a longer exhale, a slow, patient release of energy that has been gathering for ages. You breathe again, letting the calm settle over your shoulders. You breathe again, letting the calm settle behind your eyes. You breathe again, and the giant breathes with you. You imagine standing on a broad, wide landscape shaped long ago by one of these deep exhalations. Maybe it's a caldera, a basin-like depression with gentle slopes and quiet lakes. Maybe it's a plain where old volcanic rock has softened into fertile earth. Whatever image forms, it carries no fear, only memory, only stillness, only the soft echo of something ancient. The giant beneath you is not a creature of chaos, but a keeper of cycles. Heat rises, pressure shifts, magma moves, the surface responds. Over long stretches of time, the giant inhales energy and exhales transformation. These breaths shape mountains and valleys, nurture ecosystems, and scatter minerals across the crust. Even the air you draw into your lungs carries tiny remnants of the planet's past exhalations. Particles that traveled through ancient skies, settled in ancient seas, and became part of the atmosphere you breathe today. This thought brings a gentle smile. You and the earth share more than space. You share breath in a subtle, poetic way. You inhale what the planet once exhaled. You exhale what the planet may someday inhale again. It feels like a quiet connection, as though the giant beneath you has made room for you on its surface, offering a stable place for your own small, delicate breaths. As you continue imagining this immense sleeping presence, you notice how your mind drifts into a deeper state of calm. The imagery becomes soft around the edges. The warmth beneath your feet feels more real. The steady, rhythmic pulse of the earth seems to mingle with the fading tension in your shoulders. You feel grounded, anchored, held gently by a planet that has been breathing long before you were born. You picture your hand resting on the ground, sensing the faint hum of geothermal energy beneath the surface. It isn't loud. It isn't intense. It's a quiet, distant vibration, like hearing a deep bass note from a faraway song. That subtle humming reminds you that the giant is always dreaming, always turning slowly in its sleep, always storing stories in rock and magma and layers of ash. Stories you can listen to if you breathe slowly enough. You imagine the stone beneath your hand warming slightly, the way a sleeping friend's arm might warm beneath your fingertips. You don't rush the sensation. You just let it be. A reminder of presence. A reminder of scale. A reminder that while the earth is enormous, its rhythms can feel intimate when you pay attention. A breeze moves across your face, cool and even. You let it carry away any lingering tension. You let it guide your breath into an easier, quieter rhythm. The breeze becomes part of the giant's breathing too, a soft exhale drifting across the surface. Clouds shift with it. Leaves respond to it. Your eyelids feel slightly heavier under its gentle touch. Everything feels like it belongs to a cycle that is older and slower than anything human-made. And in this softness, the concept of a supervolcano transforms again. It becomes not a threat but a geological heartbeat. A slow, powerful pulse that shapes landscapes over vast stretches of time. The giant's heart hums deep below, not angrily, not unpredictably, but steadily, as part of the same rhythm that moves oceans and builds mountains. You realize you're not listening to danger. You're listening to life on planetary scales. A small, quiet humor rises in your thoughts, the kind that feels like a warm chuckle rather than a laugh. You picture the giant wearing a giant-sized sleep mask, snoring gently beneath tectonic plates, perhaps even mumbling something in its sleep, something about magma viscosity or continental drift. If the giant dreams, maybe those dreams are full of slow-floating rocks and drifting islands, all rearranging themselves like cozy pillows. You breathe again. Long, slow, soft. The giant breathes with you, and the connection deepens. You start to sense something else now, not urgency but curiosity. A gentle pull, like a whisper inviting you to follow the giant's breath across the planet. You feel drawn toward the first megacrater, a place shaped by one of these ancient exhalations. The ground seems to tilt you in its direction, guiding your attention the way a storyteller guides a listener toward the next chapter in a long, peaceful tale. You don't move yet. You simply notice the direction. You feel the invitation. The warmth rising from the earth seems to lean that way. The breeze shifts slightly. Even the quiet hum beneath the ground feels angled, as though the giant is pointing you towards something important, something calm, something waiting. You rest in this moment, letting the transition form behind your breath. The next chapter is already calling, but softly, patiently, just like the giant itself. You inhale once more, slow, full, steady. You exhale with ease. You feel the surface beneath you breathe in return. And as you inhale slowly with the giant beneath you, you follow its breath toward the first hidden scar in the crust. You arrive in Yellowstone the way a dream arrives just before sleep, quietly, gradually, as though drifting on the warm breath of something ancient. The air around you feels soft and slightly humid, carrying the faint scent of minerals and warm stone. You take a long inhale, feeling the warmth settle in your chest, and you imagine the sleeping giant beneath you shifting gently, exhaling through vents and cracks scattered across the landscape. The ground here seems alive in a calm, patient way. Steam rises from thin cracks as though the earth is letting out little sighs, the kind you make when stretching after a long, comfortable nap. Pools shimmer, bubbling softly, sending ripples across delicate surfaces tinted with colors drawn from minerals deep below. Every sound is slow, rounded, and soothing. A quiet hissing here, a soft bubbling there, an occasional distant rumble that feels more like a deep yawn than anything alarming. You walk forward with careful, relaxed steps, letting the warmth soak upward through your soles. It feels like the giant is greeting you, acknowledging your presence on its back with a lazy stretch. There's no rush in its movements, no urgency in the rising steam. Even the geysers, when they spout upward, feel more like elegant exhalations than sudden bursts. The eruptions rise, shimmer, suspend themselves in the air, and settle back down in a fine mist that cools against your skin. You can't help smiling at the thought that if the Earth is a sleeping giant, then Yellowstone is its warm pulse, a gentle heartbeat too large for sound, but perfectly sized for feeling. The warmth beneath you becomes a reminder that deep below the crust, magma pools and chambers shift like glowing tides. They move slowly, patiently, the way a giant might turn over in their sleep without ever waking. You pause near a quiet hot spring, watching the surface ripple in slow, hypnotic circles. You breathe in the steam and notice how it softens the air around your face. The warmth against your skin feels oddly comforting, like a friendly hug from a creature who doesn't quite know its own size. A tiny, harmless giggle rises inside you at the thought that the giant might be using Yellowstone as some sort of cosmic humidifier, just to keep its dreams comfortable. The bubbling spring responds with a gentle plop, as if amused by your thought. You crouch slightly, letting your fingers hover above the water's surface. You don't touch it. It's too hot for that, but you feel the heat radiating upward like a quiet reminder of the molten world beneath. You imagine magma moving through chambers far below, thick and glowing, swirling in patterns that never rush. These flows don't hurry the way human lives often do. They take their time, drifting through ancient conduits, reshaping rock slowly, patiently, like a giant smoothing wrinkles in a blanket. You straighten your posture and let your eyes wander across the vast caldera basin. The landscape stretches wide, dotted with rising plumes of vapor that twist lazily in the breeze. Each plume feels like a column of breath, lifting stories from the ground and weaving them into the sky. You sense history here, layers of eruptions, shifts, and quiet recoveries. But the history feels softened by time, rounded by the Earth's long patience. Here, you're reminded again of the idea that supervolcanoes are not violent creatures. They're simply deeper breaths. Yellowstone expanded outward in ancient times, forming this immense bowl-like shape where forests now grow, rivers now wander, and bison graze as though this land has always been a sanctuary. The giant beneath you once exhaled forcefully, reshaping the land, and then returned to its peaceful dreaming. That ancient breath still lingers, not as fear, but as warmth. You take another inhale, slow, easy, a little deeper than usual. The warm air fills your lungs as though completing a cycle the Earth began long before your existence. When you let it go, the exhale feels like it joins the steam rising around you. Your attention drifts to Old Faithful in the distance, its plume rising at regular intervals. You don't rush toward it. You simply observe how the giant lets out a predictable puff of warm breath, almost like a gentle snore. You imagine the giant lying beneath the crust, rhythmically releasing pressure through this one little spot, as though adjusting its breathing to stay comfortable. A tiny smile returns. If the giant really is snoring, this must be its polite version. A soft "excuse me," politely repeated every so often. The ground beneath you feels warm and stable, a reminder that Yellowstone is part of a volcanic system far larger than what eyes can see. Magma sits deep below, not boiling wildly, but pulsing, expanding slightly, contracting slightly. Most of the time, nothing dramatic happens at all. Instead, heat travels upward through porous stone, warming groundwater, creating geysers, hot springs, bubbling mud pots, and gentle mineral terraces. It's easy to think of these features as expressions, little hints of emotion crossing the giant's face as it dreams. A bubbling mud pot becomes a sleepy mumble. A bright, colorful spring becomes a soft blush. A tall geyser becomes a long, refreshing exhale. Everything feels animate without ever feeling alarming. As you walk along one of the wooden boardwalks, your footsteps echo gently against the planks. Each step becomes part of the rhythmic soundscape. Steam hissing on one side, bubbling on the other, wind brushing past your ears. The boardwalk guides you safely across delicate ground, reminding you that this place, though peaceful, is alive in ways deeper than human senses usually grasp. You pause again, letting the steam swirl around you like warm fog. Your breath sinks with the rising mist. Inhale and the world expands a little. Exhale and the world softens in response. You feel as though the giant's pulse is traveling upward through your bones, grounding you without holding you down. Your mind drifts to the deep chamber of magma beneath Yellowstone, not as a threat, but as a reservoir of warmth. Scientists describe it as a network of partially molten rock, slowly replenished, slowly shifting, like an ancient underwater current. You picture it glowing with soft oranges and reds, swirling around gently like the inside of a lantern. The giant's warm heart. You feel your curiosity deepen, but not sharpen. There's no edge to the feeling. It's just a calm wondering, a desire to understand how this vast system breathes and reshapes itself over time. You sense that each geyser, each ripple of heated air, each shimmering spring is a quiet message from the giant's dreaming body. You take a few slow steps forward, looking out across a field where small puffs of steam rise intermittently. It reminds you of a warm kitchen on a cold morning, little bursts of vapor drifting upward as water meets heat. The earth, in its own way, is cooking minerals here, mixing gases, shaping stone, simmering the ingredients that will someday become part of new rocks, new soils, new ecosystems. You let this image settle. You let your breath follow. Warm, slow, unhurried. You're aware, in a peaceful way, that Yellowstone's history includes enormous eruptions. But those events live deep in the past, softened by geological time, blurred like old memories. What remains now is the warmth, a lingering reminder of energy within the planet, but not a source of fear. The giant has long exhaled and returned to sleep. Your gaze drifts upward toward distant ridges that form part of the ancient caldera rim. They don't look dramatic. They look calm, worn, softened by erosion and forests. Trees grow where lava once flowed. Meadows stretch across what was once a collapsed roof of a magma chamber. Life has moved back in, quietly, naturally, the way moss returns to stone after rain. As you stand in this warm, breathing landscape, you feel a new pull, gentle, like a finger tapping your shoulder from far away. A sense that there are other breaths to follow, other craters to visit, other chapters in the giant's long story. This warmth is just the beginning, the first deep pulse in a global pattern you're slowly learning to feel rather than simply understand. You take one last long inhale, letting the steam rise around you. You exhale softly, letting your breath merge with the giant's. And with each calm breath, you follow the giant's warmth across oceans, drifting toward another ancient exhale frozen in stone. You begin by noticing the temperature of the ground beneath your imagined feet. Subtle warmth, like a quiet pulse rising from below. It feels steady, almost like the inhale-exhale rhythm of someone deeply asleep. As you stand in this inner landscape of the story, you realize that this warmth is not simply heat. It's the planet's breath moving through rock, pressure, and time. You inhale gently, and the ground seems to inhale with you, slow, unhurried, as if the two of you are sharing a single rhythm. This is the threshold of the magma chamber, the soft, glowing heart of Earth's deeper breath. When you explore this world in your mind, you picture magma not as a violent, unpredictable force, but as a warm, drifting ocean beneath the crust. It moves slowly, reshaping the stone around it the way water shapes sand over centuries. You sense how the molten material pools and spreads under the surface, forming chambers that expand the way lungs do when they quietly widen with a deep breath. You breathe in again, slow, gentle, and imagine the chamber expanding with you. This isn't a dramatic expansion. There is no sudden push, no burst of energy. It's the opposite. A soft swelling, like morning light gradually brightening through a window. The chamber presses outward in millimeters that accumulate over lifetimes. It is geological patience made visible. You feel that patience in your own body. A warm heaviness, a steady grounding. Now picture the rock surrounding the chamber. It is not rigid or brittle. It moves with the magma's pressure. You sense its slow give, its subtle stretch. Even solid stone responds to warmth, softening just enough to allow change, holding just enough strength to keep shape. These are the edges of Earth's breath, the boundary where molten movement meets the calm firmness of the crust. You run your inner attention across that boundary the way you might run your fingertips along the grain of wood. You notice textures, temperatures, subtle shifts. Above, the crust feels cool and steady, like a calm exhale. Below, the magma feels warm and alive, like a gentle inhale. The line between them moves, breath after breath, cycle after slow cycle. As you listen to the chamber, you become aware of something else. Pressure. Not tension. Not danger. Just presence. Like the fullness in your lungs when you hold a slow breath at its peak. A comfortable expansion, a reminder of space. Inside a magma chamber, pressure builds gradually as new molten material rises from deeper layers. This rise is not hurried. It drifts upward the way warm air lifts through a quiet room. And when it enters the chamber, it presses outward, shaping the cavity into something larger, more rounded, more alive. In your mind, this pressure becomes a sensation in your chest, a fullness that feels calm and complete. You hold your breath for a moment, allowing that fullness to settle. And then you release it slowly, long, soft, unforced. The chamber seems to release with you, returning to its easy rhythm. You continue listening with your imagination. You try to sense the currents inside the molten reservoir. They flow in slow circles, rising on one side, sinking on another. They loop like deep ocean currents that no one sees but everyone feels in the waves above. You picture magma rising where it is hottest, its buoyancy lifting it gently upward. When it cools a little, it sinks back down the way cool evening air settles across the land. This movement is not turbulence. It is choreography, a quiet dance that redistributes heat, shaping the chamber's life cycle. You follow these loops in your mind, letting them guide your internal breathing. Upward currents with your inhale, downward currents with your exhale. The planet and your body move as one. Every chamber holds a long memory. It remembers how it formed, how pressure shaped it, how the crust above shifted, softened, or strengthened over time. And as you imagine standing above such a chamber, perhaps above Yellowstone or Taupo or Toba, you sense the weight of that memory. Not heaviness, but depth. The kind of depth you feel when staring at the night sky and sensing how long the stars have been burning. The earth holds its stories in heat, stone, and shape. You hold your stories in breath, sensation, and thought. Different materials, same quiet truth. Both of you are shaped slowly. Both of you change patiently. Both of you breathe. Without thinking about exact temperatures or volumes or pressures, you simply imagine the chamber as a warm, glowing lung beneath the crust. A place where ancient heat gathers, stretches, and waits. You hear no rushing, no roaring, no eruption, only expansion, only contraction, only the silent language of molten stone. And in this silence, you feel something reassuring. These chambers take millennia to grow. They shift in gradual cycles, unchanged by the brief flickers of human time. You breathe into that reassurance, letting it soften your shoulders, your jaw, the space behind your eyes. Now imagine this. After many centuries of quiet, the chamber begins to swell more noticeably. Not dangerously, just perceptibly. A hint of uplift in the land above. Small enough that no one feels it, but steady enough that instruments could whisper about it. It is like the feeling of your chest rising when you take a deeper than usual breath. A breath that is not urgent, but meaningful. You feel the ground beneath you lift by the smallest fraction. So small it feels like imagination. The planet is inhaling, just a little more deeply than normal. It's an old, familiar pattern, repeated many times through geological history. You breathe with it, matching that deeper inhale. You stand in this rising landscape, feeling how slowly the chamber evolves, how gently the earth adjusts, how quietly the crust responds. And in the stillness, you begin to wonder, if this is the planet's breath, what happens when that breath becomes rhythmically uneven? When heat rises a little faster? When expansion happens a little more quickly than before? You sense that the story is leading you there, not to fear but to understanding. The earth is preparing you to listen to its deeper signals. The early rumblings, the faint whispers, the subtle shifts that come long before anything else. But for now, you stay with the breath, warm, deep, ancient, feeling its gentle pressure beneath your feet. A soft exhale moves through the crust. You release your own breath with it. And as the chapter fades, you feel the next idea forming in the distance, like the faint tremble of a new inhale. You begin this chapter by closing your eyes, just for a gentle moment, and allowing the landscape around you to fade into quiet. The warmth of the magma chamber from before still lingers beneath your imagined feet, like the memory of a long inhale that hasn't fully exhaled yet. You sense that the earth is still breathing, still expanding and settling in its ancient rhythm. But now, something else drifts upward with that breath. Faint vibration, soft, feather-light, like the whisper of footsteps on a distant floor. You aren't startled. You simply notice. The world beneath you is speaking in murmurs. These tremors are nothing like the dramatic shaking people imagine. They feel more like a heartbeat, small, rhythmic pulses that travel through stone with the patience of drifting clouds. You place your attention gently on the soles of your feet. You breathe in, you breathe out, and with each breath, the faint tremble becomes a little clearer. Not louder, not stronger, just more understandable. As if your body is tuning itself to the same frequency as the planet's soft signals. The Earth shifts slightly beneath the surface, adjusting the walls of the magma chamber, relieving a little pressure here, redistributing warmth there. Each adjustment sends a gentle ripple outward, like air brushing through curtains. These are the movements scientists call seismic whispers, tiny vibrations too small for ordinary senses, yet real enough to trace the inner workings of the planet's breath. You feel them as quiet confirmation. The earth is alive with motion, yet steady in its age-old patience. You imagine the crust as layers of folded blankets, each one carrying a memory of everything that has ever moved beneath it. When magma flows, when rock flexes, when heat shifts, the blankets tremble just a little. These trembling layers carry the signals upward, passing them like a soft message from one piece of stone to the next. You feel those messages arrive in waves. A subtle tap, a small flutter, a long slow hum. Nothing hurried, nothing alarming. Just the steady communication of a planet adjusting itself. The crust becomes a messenger. Stone becomes a listener. You become the interpreter. Another tremor rises, this one even softer than the last. You breathe in slowly, letting your inhale match its gentle timing. It feels like the earth is exhaling from deep within, releasing warmth, easing pressure, shifting weight. And each of these releases creates a little vibration, like the sigh of someone relaxing into sleep. You exhale gently with it. This shared rhythm becomes the recurring metaphor in your mind. Earth breathes, and you breathe with it. Earth murmurs, and you listen. Earth moves, and you feel grounded rather than unsettled. It's a partnership, ancient and trustworthy. Your mind drifts deeper now, wondering where these tiny pulses begin. You imagine the magma chamber again, warm, luminous, fluid. As molten rock circulates, currents bump softly against the chamber walls, similar to the way waves touch the sides of a quiet harbor. Each touch sends a ripple upward. Each ripple becomes a murmur. Each murmur becomes a quiet message written in stone. Sometimes the crust above shifts slightly, adjusting to the pressure like a blanket settling over a sleeping body. That adjustment also creates a subtle tremble, one more breath in the planet's long rhythm. These tiny signals often precede big geological changes, but not in a dramatic way. They are early hints, the first notes of a long, slow song the earth has been singing since before humans existed. You listen to that song now. Its melody is soft, grounding, and strangely comforting. You shift your attention outward from the soles of your feet to the entire landscape around you. The ground feels steady yet alive. The air holds a kind of quiet expectation, like the pause between waves at a shoreline. You place your hand on an imaginary rock nearby. You don't hear anything, but you sense a light hum traveling through it. A low, soothing vibration that seems to match your heartbeat. These tremors aren't warnings. They're rhythms, the Earth's natural way of moving through time. And as you listen, your own breathing softens even more. You inhale slowly through your nose. Hold for a gentle moment. Exhale like a warm breeze at dusk. The tremors follow a similar pattern: rise, pause, fall. Deeper underground, the magma chamber's slow expansion sends signals outward in all directions. Some travel through dense, cool rock. Others rise through pockets of softer material. Each layer changes the vibration slightly, like a whisper passing through different rooms. You imagine these layers as a network of quiet communication. One stone hums to the next. One ridge carries the message to another. One small tremble ripples out, softened by distance yet still meaningful. This whisper network tells scientists about pressure changes, heat shifts, new cracks forming, or old ones relaxing. But you don't need the data to feel the pattern. You sense it through metaphor, through breath, vibration, presence. Another ripple rises, just a touch stronger, but still gentle, still slow. It feels almost like the earth clearing its throat, preparing to speak with more clarity. You notice how the air above the ground seems to react, even if only in imagination. The space feels more open, as though something important is moving upward from below. The tremor is not a shout, not a warning, just a small sign of change, like the moment someone shifts in their sleep before settling again. At this point, you might expect your mind to wander into worry, but it doesn't. The tone of these movements is too soft, too ancient, too steady. They don't ask for tension, they ask for attention. You anchor yourself in your breath, noticing how calm it feels. Inhale warm, exhale slow. Let shoulders soften. Let your weight sink into the ground. The tremors seem to echo that softening, like the earth is matching your calm with its own slow reassurance. You sense how easy it would be, outside this gentle story, to think of tremors as something frightening. But here, in this sleepy science world, you see them for what they truly are: information, drifting upward through the crust like a message in a bottle. These murmurs help scientists understand the planet. They help you understand the rhythm beneath your feet. They help the Earth release pressure in tiny, peaceful increments. The planet prefers quiet adjustments over dramatic ones. Most of its communication is this: soft, subtle, rhythmic. You listen to it the way you listen to distant ocean waves, steady and grounding. You stay with the vibrations a little longer. You feel them arrive and fade, each one part of the same long breath. And then, something new appears within the murmurs. A slight change in tone. Not louder, not sharper, just different, as if the earth is adjusting its breathing pattern, stretching a little deeper, shifting a little more meaningfully. This shift doesn't alarm you. It intrigues you, because you know that murmurs often precede deeper movement. Still slow, still gentle, but worth understanding. The earth is ready to teach you the next layer of its quiet language. As you lean into this new pattern, the tremors settle into a rhythm that feels almost like footsteps, measured, intentional, moving upward from deep in the crust. These aren't just murmurs anymore. They're signals, gentle but unmistakable, hinting that the earth is preparing to shift in a more noticeable way. You begin this chapter with a long, slow inhale, one that matches the subtle rising motion you imagine beneath your feet. Not a jump, not a jolt, just a soft upward drift, like the slight lift of your chest when a deeper breath slips in. The earth is inhaling again, and you are standing on its ribcage. At first, you feel almost nothing, maybe a sense of being subtly elevated, as though someone placed a quiet cushion beneath you while you weren't looking. The change is slow enough to be invisible but steady enough to be meaningful. This is uplift, one of the gentlest signs the planet offers. The crust rises by the smallest degrees, stretching over pockets of warm magma deep below. But you don't need measurements or numbers to feel it. You just imagine the land's surface responding to heat the way a soft loaf of bread rises before it bakes. Slow, patient, expanding from the inside outward. You breathe in again. The earth breathes with you, and in that shared breath, the uplift becomes a story. You imagine the magma chamber now, not turbulent but tranquil, like a warm pool quietly filling in a cavern. As more molten rock gathers, it doesn't rush forward. It simply presses upward with the slow insistence of warmth. Stone bends. Layers stretch. Crust adjusts. This bending is not brittle or harsh. It is more like a very slow sigh through the rock, easing tension, redistributing space, reshaping the land in unhurried waves. You picture the chamber as the heart of the sleeping giant, swelling slightly with each ancient inhale. And above it, the crust responds the way blankets rise when the giant's chest does. Uplift is the blanket being lifted. You let your imagination wander across the terrain around you. You see gentle humps forming in the ground, soft domes where the crust arches just a little higher than before. Trees seem to tilt slightly upward, though they remain unaware of the motion. Streams trickle more slowly, spreading out in shallow fans because the land beneath them has risen like the end of a wooden table being raised 1 centimeter at a time. None of it feels disruptive. Feels like rearrangement, natural, patient, almost tender. The earth is adjusting its posture. You feel it in your bones. Another inhale rises from the planet's interior. Slower this time, deeper. Like the giant beneath you has reached a restful stage of dreaming where breaths come long and smooth. With this inhale, you sense the crust lift again. You imagine yourself rising with it, almost imperceptibly, the way a leaf floats a little higher when a lake swells under it. This is the rhythm scientists watch for, uplift moving over months, years, lifetimes. But here, in this sleepy understanding, you feel it in a moment of stillness. You sway slightly with the rise, keeping your balance with a gentle exhale. Uplift becomes a sensation, not a statistic. Beneath you, the warm magma shifts, creating a slow upward pressure. But pressure here is not something stressful. It is simply the earth making room for itself. Like someone stretching under a heavy blanket, finding space in their own body. As the magma expands, the crust above behaves like a flexible lid, bending just enough to accommodate the warmth. You visualize the crust as a living material now, elastic, resilient, adapting in slow, peaceful intervals. The idea comforts you. Stone is not rigid. It listens. It responds. It breathes. And you, standing gentle and small on its surface, listen in return. Somewhere deep beneath you, tiny cracks form. Thin lines that open not with violence but with the mild ease of dry paint stretching on a wall. These cracks relieve pressure, guiding heat toward areas of lower resistance. Each crack sends a soft tremble upward. You feel one now, drifting through your imaginary landscape like the faintest vibration of a cat walking across the bed. Barely perceptible, but utterly real. You smile at the sensation. The earth is adjusting again, tidying its internal chambers before settling back into rest. As uplift continues, you begin to imagine the formation of a dome, one of the most iconic signals of a magma chamber pressing upward beneath the surface. But here, in your sleepy exploration, the dome isn't dramatic. It grows like a slow breath that never rushes, never forces, never commands attention. The ground arches. Trees recline gently outward. Shadows shift as angles change. And you stand atop a new gentle rise that didn't exist in your imagination an hour ago. It feels like standing on the belly of the sleeping giant as it inhales. Round, warm, peaceful. This recurring metaphor roots you again in the giant's presence. A reminder that nothing you're sensing is unusual. Nothing is unexpected. Everything is part of a creature older than time itself learning new patterns of rest. You rest a hand against the air, feeling the weightlessness of your breath slowly synchronizing with the uplift. Every inhale expands you. Every exhale softens you. In this chapter, you notice how uplift brings reassurance instead of worry. You see how the earth prefers to release pressure in early, gentle hints, lifting the crust here, expanding a chamber there, allowing warmth to circulate like a soft glow beneath a blanket. These movements are small messages. I am adjusting. I am breathing. I am alive and calm. You let these messages settle into you like warm sand. Uplift is not an event. It's a process measured in centuries, but imagined here in a moment of quiet reflection. You let time stretch, pulling the slow changes into a single, cohesive experience. You stand on a rising landform that has been lifting for ages, and you sense its entire history with each gentle hum. The Earth's breath is older than mountains, older than oceans, older than any story humans have ever told. And now, for a short, sleepy moment, you get to stand on the inhale. You smile again, thinking about how patient this uplift is, how it might be rising so slowly that if you had a picnic on the dome, your sandwich would finish rising slightly before you noticed anything else. You imagine a bird trying to perch on a rock, slightly confused why its branch feels 1 millimeter taller today compared to yesterday. The humor is soft, subtle, like warm fog drifting through your thoughts. It disrupts nothing. It just lightens the moment. A final breath of warmth rises beneath you. You sense it not as heat, but as movement, slow and smooth, like warm honey drifting upward through thick layers of sponge. The crust flexes again. The dome rises a fraction more. The tremors whisper through stone with the softness of fingertips brushing fabric. These are the signs scientists look for: ground swelling, heat flowing, crust bending. You see all of them now in a single peaceful picture. You inhale deeply with the earth. You exhale slowly with the earth. You feel uplift reach a subtle plateau, never finished, just pausing, like the end of a long inhale before the next movement begins. And you realize that while uplift is a gentle sign, it leads naturally to something more dynamic. If uplift is the inhale, then the adjustments that follow are the quiet beats of a shifting rhythm. And that is where your journey is taking you next. You begin this chapter standing in the quietest kind of morning. A faint blue hush, the sort of light that appears just before the sun truly stretches its arms. The risen land beneath you still holds the softness of the previous chapter, like a hill gently puffed upward by the earth's long, patient inhale. Now the breath begins to travel, not upward, not outward, but through the body of the planet. You breathe in, a long, slow inhale, and you imagine the giant beneath you doing the same. The ground under your feet hums with faint vibrations. Not dramatic, not alarming. Just the gentle signatures of a living world adjusting its posture in sleep. These tiny tremors feel like pulses, soft, rhythmic beats traveling through bone and stone. Scientists listen for these pulses the way doctors listen for a heartbeat. Stethoscopes on human skin, sensors on ancient rock. The metaphor settles warmly into your mind. Earth has a pulse, and you are learning to feel it. You place your hand against your chest, notice your own steady rhythm, and imagine the same pattern far below. Slower, deeper, older. In your mind's wandering vision, you see a group of scientists kneeling on the uplifted ground. Their instruments look delicate, small boxes, slender rods, tiny discs pressed into the soil like earbuds plugged into the planet's surface. You picture one scientist gently wiping dust from a sensor with the tenderness of someone brushing hair from a child's forehead. Another adjusts a cable, making sure it rests without tension. Nothing about the scene is rushed. Nothing feels urgent. Everything is soft, deliberate, careful. These sensors are the stethoscopes of the sleeping giant. They record vibrations that rise through layers of rock, waves of motion created by the shifting magma, the stretching crust, the settling ridges. And, just like a heartbeat, these vibrations form patterns. Patterns you will soon learn to interpret. A small tremor drifts upward now, brushing against your sense of balance like the faint wiggle of someone adjusting their foot under a blanket. You don't tense. You simply acknowledge it. This tremor is a muscle twitch in the giant's sleep. You smile quietly at the image. Somewhere, far below, the earth flexes a tiny muscle. Perhaps a thin crack expands slightly, or a bit of molten rock shifts its position, making room for new warmth. And that twitch travels upward as a vibration, through layers of rock, through sediment, through the surface until it reaches you. You feel it. You interpret it. You release it with a slow exhale. Now you imagine the Earth's breath moving through its layers, not as air but as energy, waves of motion that ripple outward from deep inside. These waves drift through the mantle, through the crust, through fractures and faults and quiet pockets of stone that have held their shape for ages. Scientists call these waves seismic signals. You call them whispers, whispers of a giant sleeping under your feet. The waves move slowly, gently, their rhythm shaped by the rock they pass through. Hard stone sends the wave forward with a crisp hum. Softer earth muffles it, turning it into a warm, rounded pulse. Every wave has its own texture. Every texture tells a story. You close your eyes again. You inhale softly. You listen. A low, steady vibration rises from the crust. Then another. Then a faint flutter, like a bird flicking its wings in a dream. You feel none of this as danger, only as communication, messages sent through the Earth's body to let you know how it is adjusting, settling, breathing. Listening without fear becomes a form of meditation here. You are not predicting anything. You are not bracing for anything. You are simply present, allowing the Earth to share its ancient rhythms with you. Another faint signal reaches the surface. This one feels different, broader, smoother. It reminds you of a chest rising during sleep. The giant's chest. You picture the crust swelling gently as magma shifts below, lifting the land by minuscule amounts. These movements create long, slow signals that travel with the softness of a heavy creature adjusting its blankets. In your mind, you watch the land rise just a little, then fall back, then rise again. Each motion is as slow as your breathing. Each motion connects you deeper to the planet. You turn your attention back to the scientists. Their instruments record all these waves, twists, pulses, hums, breaths. The devices convert the signals into drawn lines on screens, soft curves rising and falling like waves on a calm sea. One scientist smiles at the display, tilting their head the same way someone does when listening to a lullaby played in another room. Another scientist nods slowly, recognizing the pattern of a mild, familiar tremble. In this moment, you understand something gently profound. Scientists aren't predicting disaster. They're interpreting a body, the Earth's body. They are listening to it with compassion, curiosity, and quiet respect. A tiny vibration surprises you, not because it's strong, but because it tickles your imagination. It feels almost like the Earth sneezed in its sleep, sending a ripple of motion outward. The image makes you laugh, very softly, barely more than a warm breath. You picture dust swirling in the magma chamber like floating feathers, the Earth murmuring a sleepy as the tremor passes. Planet sneezing. The idea is ridiculous, and yet strangely comforting. As your attention settles, you begin to notice patterns. A long wave followed by a short pulse. A gentle hum after a quiet pause. A rise in the land accompanied by a faint tremble. These aren't alarms. They're rhythms. They're the choreography of a world in constant, peaceful motion. You imagine yourself tracing the patterns with your fingertips in the air, smooth arcs, soft dips, gentle spirals, like drawing the path of a falling leaf. Each movement adds another layer to your understanding, and each understanding brings you comfort. Now you let your awareness drift deeper, imagining the inside of the Earth, not fiery and violent, but warm and spacious, like a cathedral carved from living stone. In this imagined cathedral, every sound echoes, a pulse, a tremor, a shifting of magma. Each echo travels outward, becoming part of the murmuring symphony you feel on the surface. The Earth doesn't hide its movements. It expresses them openly, patiently, repeatedly. And you, in your quiet listening, become part of that expression. Another long wave drifts upward. You inhale slowly. The wave rises. You exhale. The wave fades. The synchronization is effortless, natural, sleepy. For a moment, the line between your breath and the planet's breath blurs entirely. You and the Earth simply breathe together, your rhythms aligned like two bodies resting side by side. The vibrations begin to soften now, like the final notes of a lullaby drifting into silence. You sense that the Earth has shared all the messages it needs to share in this chapter. But before the hum fades entirely, one more signal rises. Deeper, smoother, warmer. A long, steady pulse that feels like the flow of thick, glowing liquid beneath the crust. You understand immediately. This is magma itself. the bloodstream of the giant, and it calls to you. The world around you feels unhurried as you settle into this chapter, as if the very air loosens its shoulders and exhales. You follow that exhale, letting it drift through you like warm mist. The earth beneath your feet seems to echo that same slow release, an immense, ancient breath drawn in molten stone. You sense it again, the recurring metaphor that has whispered its way through each chapter. The planet's heartbeat, steady and unbroken, pulsing inside the crust beneath you. Tonight, you tune yourself to that rhythm. Here, in the soft twilight of your imagination, the ground becomes a living diaphragm, rising and falling in cycles too slow for human eyes. Volcanic systems aren't frantic or explosive, not in the way stories often frame them. They breathe in vast, unhurried patterns. Their movements stretch across millennia, far beyond generations, far beyond memory. You simply stand in the quiet and listen. You picture an inhale, not a sudden gasp, but a long, deep drawing of breath that begins in the mantle. Heat moves upward like a warm tide, soft and glowing. Rock behaves like honey at these scales. It bends, flows, rearranges itself in ways you can't see but can sense, like warmth spreading slowly through a blanket. You imagine yourself at the edge of a caldera, the kind formed by supervolcanoes long ago. Nothing is erupting, nothing is urgent, but underground, the inhale continues. Magma gathers pockets of warmth, small reservoirs merging into larger ones. The earth is preparing, but not with tension. This is not a coiled spring. It is simply the next heartbeat forming, patient and inevitable. Every volcanic system inhales differently. Some breathe with tiny, frequent pulses, short volcanic cycles measured in just a few human lifetimes. Others breathe in the broad, rolling cadence of supervolcanoes, where a single inhale might last hundreds of thousands of years. You sense that timescale not with fear but with awe. These cycles move like drifting tectonic plates, calm and measured, never in a hurry. As the inhale unfolds, changes ripple subtly. Ground swelling a few centimeters over decades, heat signatures shifting beneath the soil, gases filtering upward. Not dramatic, not dangerous in isolation, just the earth stretching its ribs. You imagine laying your hand on the ground and feeling a faint warmth, like resting your palm on the chest of a sleeping giant. You feel the inhale beneath your fingertips. You shift your attention to a quieter moment, the small stillness the earth holds before it exhales. It's almost like a meditation pause, a suspension, a moment of gathering. This pause can last so long that entire civilizations come and go without noticing. Forests grow, rivers bend, glaciers retreat, and still the earth holds the breath. The cycle continues invisibly. This spacious pause reminds you of slow breathing exercises. Inhale, gentle hold, long, unhurried exhale. You match your breathing to that cadence. You soften your shoulders. You let gravel thoughts settle. The heartbeat metaphor returns, not pounding or forceful, but steady like a deep drum echoing through ancient stone. Then comes the exhale, not always eruptive, not always dramatic, but always transformative. For volcanoes, an exhale might release pressure through deep fissures, or through gentle lava flows, or sometimes through clouds of gas drifting into the sky like warm breath on a winter morning. In the case of supervolcanoes, the exhale can be monumental when it finally arrives, reshaping entire regions. But even then, the planet doesn't think in terms of destruction or urgency. To the Earth, an eruption is simply a release, one part of a longer cycle, a clearing of space for new landscapes to emerge. You picture this exhale as a shimmering wave of warmth moving through the crust, releasing tension that has been building for ages. It is not violent in your mind's eye. It is cleansing, renewing, a natural continuation of the cycle that began eons ago. Volcanoes exhale in many ways. Some breathe quietly. Some release song-like plumes of gas that rise and dissolve. Some reshape continents. All share the same purpose: balance. The earth exhales, then settles again. The heartbeat returns to its steady rhythm. As you stand within this imaginative landscape, the idea settles over you gently. Volcanic cycles are a form of memory. Layers of lava, layers of ash, layers of cooled magma. Each holds a timestamp, a soft geological note written in stone. Through these layers, scientists can reconstruct the Earth's breathing rhythms, reading them like tree rings or sedimentary diaries. Each cycle leaves behind messages, quiet markings that say, here, a pulse passed. Here, the Earth inhaled warmth. Here, pressure released. You let that sink in. You realize the planet isn't unpredictable, simply vast. Its rhythms aren't erratic. They're just slow. When scientists monitor volcanic systems, studying uplift, analyzing gas emissions, measuring temperature gradients, they are essentially placing a stethoscope on the chest of the Earth, listening for the next part of the cycle, listening for the next heartbeat. And you, in this moment, feel aligned with that perspective. Not alarmed, not anxious, just deeply aware. You breathe in. You hold the breath softly. You exhale slowly. Each cycle mirrors the planet's own movements. It's soothing to imagine yourself tuned to something so ancient, so patient. You let your thoughts drift like ash settling after a distant eruption, slow and graceful. The recurring metaphor returns, steady as ever. The heartbeat of Earth, deep, slow, resilient. You understand now that volcanic cycles aren't warnings or threats. They're just part of how the Earth moves through time, how it breathes, how it renews itself, how it keeps its internal heartbeat strong. As the chapter begins to settle, you picture yourself walking along the edge of an extinct caldera. The ground is cool. The wind is quiet. The Earth's next breath is still lifetimes away. But beneath your feet, in layers of ancient stone, clues wait patiently. Clues about past pulses, past exhalations, and the patterns woven through them. You feel a gentle curiosity rising, the kind that leads you deeper. You are ready to explore how scientists use these stories in stone, these traces of ancient breaths, to understand what tomorrow might hold. You ease into this chapter like stepping into a quiet museum at dusk. The air feels soft, full of subtle echoes rather than noise. Every step you take seems to land on something ancient, something that has waited calmly for your presence. You breathe in. The scent of imagined ash, dry, mineral, faint, drifts across your mind like dust motes floating in a beam of warm light. You picture yourself entering a broad caldera floor, empty and still. The ground beneath you is layered with stories, each one preserved in the language of stone. Tonight, you learn to read those stories, not with urgency, not with analysis as sharp as steel, but with a soft, receptive curiosity, the kind you bring to a bedtime tale. The Earth's heartbeat, your recurring metaphor, pulses through these layers, leaving traces like gentle fingerprints in cooled ash. You kneel and the learning begins. The ash beneath you isn't just ash. It's memory. One layer, thin and gray, settled during a quiet exhalation. Another, thicker, darker, arrived during a stronger pulse. Another holds tiny crystals that formed inside a magma chamber long before the eruption ever happened. Everything is a clue. Scientists call these layers tephra, but that word feels too small for the world they hold. When you touch a layer in your imagination, it feels fragile, like the page of an old journal. When held together, ashes, crystals, minerals, they form a record of Earth's breathing cycles. A rise, a pause, an exhale, a settling, a new beginning. The world captures every movement. As you slide your hand through the powdered surface, you can almost sense the moment it fell. The warmth drifting upward, the plume rising into a sky long forgotten, the gentle descent of particles that would sleep for ages. This is where geology transforms into something poetic. Stone remembers what the world forgets. You shift your attention to crystals, tiny, shimmering timekeepers hidden within volcanic rocks. They grow in magma chambers the way frost forms on a window, gradually, quietly, layer by layer. Their internal patterns reflect the conditions they grew in. You imagine holding one between your fingertips. Its edges are soft with eons. Inside, microscopic stripes tell stories. A streak formed when magma rose, another when it cooled, another when fresh melt arrived from deeper layers. Each stripe is a heartbeat, Scientists study these crystals using delicate instruments. They examine their chemistry the way a reader examines handwriting, looking for small variations, subtle shifts, faint signatures left by the Earth's interior. To you, they feel like tiny lanterns glowing in the dark, illuminating the paths of ancient molten rivers. You breathe slowly, aligning with their patience. They take thousands of years to form. They never rush. They never hurry. They simply exist, capturing time grain by grain. And you feel yourself slowing, matching their rhythm. You stand and begin walking across the caldera floor. Every step taps lightly on a chapter of Earth's past. Ash layers alternate with soil, lava flows, and sediments, building a sequence, an archive far older than any human city. A thin white layer might mark a small eruption from a distant volcano. A thick black layer might come from a colossal event closer to home. Each layer spreads across valleys and mountains, sometimes across continents, letting scientists trace their origins through space and time. You imagine the world during those eruptions, not with fear, not with drama, but with expansive wonder. Plume rising, light filtering through, the soft fall of volcanic snow settling onto forests that have long since disappeared. The Earth writes its stories in these layers, not in words, but in textures, colors, densities, mineral signatures. When scientists dig into them, they aren't disturbing the past, they are listening to it. You picture a gentle brush sweeping dust away, a careful hand revealing a thin band of fine ash, a whisper of recognition. Here, a pulse passed, and you feel reassured, because even the most powerful eruptions leave more memory than mystery. They make patterns, and patterns can be followed. You now imagine yourself in a quiet laboratory, but it doesn't feel cold or clinical. It's serene, dimly lit, spacious, filled with instruments that hum like distant lullabies. Here, volcanic materials are read the way musicians read sheets of music. A geologist lifts a sample into a beam of light. Another examines the curved surface of a pumice fragment. Another draws faint lines across a map, connecting ash deposits across distant lands. Each ash layer becomes a waypoint. Each crystal becomes a timestamp. Each chemical signature becomes a phrase in Earth's ongoing language. They piece together cycles, the inhaling of magma, the buildup of pressure, the quiet pause, the eventual exhale. All of it forms a rhythm, a pulse, a heartbeat. Once again, the metaphor returns, soft and steady, like a gentle knock on a familiar door. You realize scientists aren't predicting the future so much as recognizing the past. Every eruption leaves a blueprint. Every footprint of ash points toward patterns repeating. The Earth never hides its story. It simply writes slowly. You step outside the imagined lab and find yourself overlooking a broad landscape. Hills formed by ancient lava flows, cliffs cut cleanly by erosion revealing bands of volcanic history. The land looks like a scroll unrolled. Each cliff face is a paragraph. Each exposed layer is a sentence. Each mineral line is punctuation. You trace the contours with your eyes and feel a warmth spreading in your chest. This is the Earth showing you its heart plainly, without hesitation. The heartbeat you've followed all book long is here, visible in layers of rock, in the quiet architecture of cooled magma. Volcanic plateaus rising like gentle steps. Ash plains stretching like soft blankets. Old calderas forming serene basins. Nothing looks dangerous. Nothing feels chaotic. It is all part of an ancient, elegant rhythm. Your breath deepens without effort. Inhale, pause, exhale, settle. The same cycle unfolds in stone. As you walk, a soft realization arrives. The past is not separate from the future. It is braided into it. Scientists use ash layers to estimate eruption frequencies, crystal chemistry to reconstruct magma movement, landscape patterns to understand how cycles have repeated over millions of years. None of these clues offer exact predictions, but they reveal tendencies, habits, preferences. Earth, like any living system, has rhythms it returns to. You feel a sense of groundedness in that idea, not a certainty of dates or events, but a reassurance that nothing the planet does comes without precedent. Every future pulse has an echo in a past one. And in understanding those echoes, the world feels less unpredictable, less mysterious, less vast in its uncertainty. You feel small in the best way, like a quiet observer of a grand pattern that has been unfolding long before you arrived. The wind in your imagination shifts, carrying soft grains of ash into the air. They swirl lazily, catching the last light of an unseen sun, floating like silver dust. You watch them rise and fall in slow spirals. They remind you of something you're about to explore, how all these ancient messages help scientists shape ideas of tomorrow. The ashes settle. Your breathing steadies. The Earth's heartbeat hums beneath your feet, deep, slow, eternal. And with a calm, open curiosity,